This year has been a crazy one. Through all the injuries and health and safety protocols and everything that's been going on, we learned a lot this year. There have been many stars who have broken out and many players have changed the narrative about them, whether it's for better or for worse. But I'm glad to say that there's a lot more stars proving themselves to be much better, and they far outweigh the amount of people that have regressed. Today, that's what we'll be talking about. We will go through every major thing the 2021 NBA season has taught us. We got a lot to cover, so let's get right into it. The first major takeaway from the season is the narrative around Giannis Antetokounmpo. In 2019 and 2020, he got shut down, so the Bucks got shut down. In 2019, they blew a 2-0 lead in the conference finals and lost 4 straight games. In 2020, the Heat beat them in 5 games. Giannis got injured after the Bucks were already down 3-0, so that wasn't much of a factor. He was getting stopped in the playoffs, and he couldn't lead his team past the Eastern Conference. The narrative was that teams could just build a wall to stop Giannis, and that would force Chris Middleton or another player to win the game, with Giannis not having as much of an impact. But this year, he shut that down. He led his team to an NBA championship. He had back-to-back 40-point games in the finals, and he finished it off with a 50-point game. That was the definition of dominant. You don't stumble into an NBA championship. You win 4 7-game series in a row. Now he shut down that old narrative and has proven that he can be the first option on a championship team. In his first finals appearance, he averaged 35 points, grabbed 13 rebounds, dished out 5 assists on 61% shooting from the field. What's crazy is that those numbers have been brought down from game 1, where he was coming back from injury and wasn't 100%. We haven't seen such a dominant finals appearance since Shaq, and he's honestly had one of the best playoff runs in NBA history. And he did this with Chris Middleton as his second option. That's another takeaway. Chris Middleton can be the second option on a championship level team. Many people thought Chris Middleton wouldn't cut it to be Giannis's Robin, but he's proven them wrong. He does have a few off games, but then he would come back and put up 40. He hasn't been afraid of the biggest moment, and he is enough to be the Bucks' second option. The second major takeaway is that Devin Booker can lead a good team and can contribute to winning. Before the season, the biggest criticism of Booker's game was that his play didn't contribute to wins, and some would even say that he was putting up empty stats. Chris Paul's impact was huge for the Suns, and you could make the argument that he was the best player on the Suns this year. They don't have a clear first option, but they have a duo in Devin Booker and CP3. They wouldn't have made it to the NBA Finals or finished as the second best record in the league without him, but that doesn't take away from the improvement the Suns made. Their team as a whole improved a lot, and I still think that they would have been a great team without Chris Paul. We've seen flashes in these playoffs how the Suns play when Chris Paul is injured or is having a bad game. Devin Booker has stepped up and proven he could lead to winning and can lead a very solid team. And I can say the same thing about Trae Young. The Hawks have been in the bottom of the Eastern Conference ever since Trae got drafted, and that was his biggest criticism of his game. This year, even though they were on pace to make the play-in tournament at the time, he still didn't make the All-Star team this year because of the narrative around him. He led his team to a playoff spot, avoiding the play-in tournament, and matched up against the Knicks. Most people had the Knicks winning, but it was still supposed to be very close. But then the Hawks beat them in 5 games. Then they took the 76ers to 7 games, and they beat them in Game 7 on the road. Then they were in the conference finals against the Bucks. Both Trae Young and Giannis got injured in the later part of the series, but the Bucks ended up winning in 6 games. Trae Young has been amazing these playoffs, and he solidified himself as a player that can lead to winning. One of the teams the Hawks beat, the 76ers, really solidified a narrative that has been floating around for the past couple of years, splitting up the duo of Embiid and Simmons. Many people have been saying this last year or the year before, but now it's pretty clear that it isn't going to work. Looking at the fit and how Simmons played in the playoffs, I'm sure this duo won't stay together much longer. Not only isn't isn't it going to work out, but Simmons is taking up cap space that can be used for another star player. Daryl Morey is very aggressive in terms of trades and free agency, so I feel like Simmons is going to be part of a package to get some sort of bona fide star. And one player they might be looking at is Damian Lillard. And similar to the last takeaway, this has been in discussion for the past few years, but now it's solidified. Damian Lillard needs more help. He hasn't had an all-star since LaMarcus Aldridge in 2015. He also hasn't made it out of the first round 4 times in the last 5 years. He had a historic performance in these playoffs and had one of the best playoff games ever, but they lost. The Nuggets didn't have Jamal Murray or Will Barton, and they still beat the Trailblazers in 6 games. Damian Lillard has been very loyal to this franchise, but the Blazers keep failing to give him competent pieces around him. There have been some rumors recently that he might be requesting a trade, but those are just rumors. If I was Damian Lillard and I wasn't getting pieces I could compete with, I would leave Portland. And I wouldn't go to a new team to form a super team, but I would go to a place with another bona fide star and a good roster. I would want to compete in a deep playoff run year after year and be in a conversation to win the championship. There's a saying that goes like this: defense wins championships. And that has been proven once again this year. This year, there's been so much offensive firepower that many people make the case that you don't need a good defense to win. At first, I was going to say injuries played a huge factor, but I believe the Nets would have won the championship if they were fully healthy and everything else panned out the same. But then I looked at the numbers, and although defensive rating isn't a perfect stat, they still had the 4th best defense in these playoffs. Nicholas Claxton was a good defender, Bruce Brown too, Joe Harris was solid, Blake Griffin actually did an okay job trying to slow down Giannis, Kevin Durant was also a pretty good defender. So even then, the Nets had a good defensive team. Another thing that I want to add is that the 2 teams in the finals both have a top 3 defensive rating in the playoffs. The Bucks have the best defense, and the Suns are 3rd. We even saw how successful the Knicks were this season. The vast majority of NBA fans thought that they would not make the playoffs, probably not even the play-in tournament, but they managed to make it to the playoffs while avoiding the play-in tournament. They had the 4th best defense in the regular season, and that was a huge part of their success. It isn't just about how much your team scores, but it's also about limiting how much your opponents can score. That's the recipe for success. History has proven that defense wins championships, and the trend continued once again this year. The next takeaway from this season is about LeBron James, and there's no question that he had a down year. He didn't even look like his regular self. Even though he was coming back from an injury, in the playoffs, he underperformed. And something that has nothing to do with the injury is quitting on his team. He would leave playoff games with half a quarter left, and as someone in the comments said, the self-proclaimed king leaving his men in battle. He gave off similar energy to 2019 LeBron. He wasn't playing hard and was just lazy on defense. Injuries are only so much of an excuse. Throughout his career, he has been an Iron Man where he suffered little to no injuries and was able to carry a team to the finals year after year, and I didn't see that from him this year. Not just the achievements he did or did not make, but the attitude to it, especially in the playoffs. He's 36 years old, and so many people expect him to play at such a high level because he built up this narrative that he's indestructible. And that's very impressive for LeBron to do, but us fans need to think realistically. As great as LeBron is, he will start slowing down any time now, whether it's this coming season or in 1 or 2 years after that. Just because he's changing his number back to number 6 doesn't mean he's gonna get his 2013 superpowers back again. I don't wish for this to happen, trust me when I say that, but I think LeBron will start to slow down and injuries definitely aren't going to help. Another takeaway from this season is that Paul George can lead a team, a good team. After last season's playoff underperformance, he's had the most to prove coming into this season. He said he was suffering anxiety and depression in the NBA bubble, and nicknames like Pandemic P, PG 13%, and Way Off P definitely didn't help. He battled back this season and was really successful. When he had a great game, I found that the media wasn't advertising it nearly as much as if he had a bad game. But I think that's good for him, because when your success goes under the radar, you're a dangerous person and can unleash that when you need to. And that's what he did. In the Utah vs LA series, it was tied 2-2 and Kawhi was injured, and Paul George rose to the occasion. And although Terrence Mann had 39 points in Game 6 to close out the series, Paul George still had 28 points in that game and had a 37-point game before that on 55% shooting. In the Suns series, Kawhi missed the whole thing, and Paul George had to lead the team once again. The Clippers would push the series to 6 games, and PG would average 29 points, 10.5 rebounds, and 5 assists a game. Another takeaway from this season is that Kevin Durant and Steph Curry came back healthy. These are two generational talents, and it was weird not seeing them both in the league last season. I didn't have as much worry for Steph because he broke his wrist, but an Achilles tear has ruined many careers, and the same thing could have happened to KD. But gladly it didn't. Curry came back better than ever, which wasn't a sure thing either, and so is KD. It's great seeing those two players play, and they should be consensus top 3 players in the league. Curry won the scoring title and carried the Warriors to a few possessions away from the playoffs, and KD came out and pushed the Bucks to 7 games in overtime without Kyrie for the last half of the series and Harden on one leg. He put on some of the best playoff performances ever and was literally inches away from going to the conference finals and the finals and maybe even win a championship. But it's good for both of them to be back, so us fans can be blessed to be able to watch them play and do their thing. The second last takeaway from this season is that injuries are the worst part about basketball. It's bound to happen and it's part of the game, and it's too bad. We had so many players sitting out, and when injuries happen, not everyone returns to their old self. As fans, we want to see high-level teams compete with the highest level of players healthy. It makes the game so much more exciting, and unfortunately, a lot of players had to be injured this season. And the very last takeaway from this season is that the future of the NBA is starting right now. I made a video about this a few weeks ago. You can click the card to watch the whole thing, but I'll quickly go over it right now. There have been so many young stars breaking out and are playing at an elite level. Donovan Mitchell led his team to the best record in the NBA. Jason Tatum made the conference finals 2 of the last 4 years. Jokic won the MVP. Luka is putting up historic playoff performances and might be the future face of the league. Giannis won 2 MVPs, a Defensive Player of the Year, and won the championship this year to go along with the Finals MVP. John Morant led his team to the playoffs and averaged 30 points a game, and Trae Young just led his team to the conference finals. As the current superstars have been dominating the leagues for the past 5 to 10 years, as they start to slow down, the league is in good hands as the new generation starts. And that's it. Those are the main takeaways from the 2021 NBA season. I tried to fit a lot into this video in the most concise way possible, so I hope you enjoyed it. I read every single comment, so in case I forgot something, feel free to drop it in the comments down below. Subscribe for future basketball content, and thank you for watching.